Christmas ain't no place for losers, Mama. Those were his words. My son, the boy I raised alone, the man who had just slammed the door in my face while his wife stood behind him smiling, like it was the best show of the year. Loser. That word hung in the freezing December air like a curse. I didn't scream, I didn't cry, and I didn't beg. I just nodded calmly. I turned around and walked toward my car. But as I drove back to my place, something shifted inside me. It wasn't rage, it was clarity. The kind of clarity that cuts like broken glass. That very night, sitting in front of my laptop, I canceled the shared mortgage payment on their house, canceled their auto insurance, and canceled every single automatic transfer that had been holding up their perfect life for years. 5 minutes. That's all it took to dismantle the house of cards they called their success. And now, he's losing his mind. Let me tell you how I got here. Let me tell you how a mother becomes a loser, and how a loser becomes something much worse. Someone who has nothing left to lose. It all started 5 years ago. Jamal had just married Tiffany. She was beautiful, ambitious, with the kind of smile that shines bright in photos, but fades the moment the cameras disappear. They came to my small apartment on a spring afternoon. I was thrilled. I thought it was a courtesy visit. I thought they were finally going to include me in their new life. But it wasn't a visit. It was a negotiation. "Mama, we need your help," Jamal said. "Tiffany wants a house, a real 2-story house with a yard in a nice neighborhood. But the bank needs a co-signer. It's just some paperwork, just your signature. You won't have to pay a thing. It's just for security." Tiffany touched my hand. Her nails were perfect, long, expensive, coral-colored. "Mama Celeste, you know how important it is for us to start right. A family needs stability. Your future grandkids need a home." Future grandkids. Those words were the perfect hook. I pictured a house full of laughter, Christmases together, Sunday morning pancakes, me being the grandma who bakes cookies and tells stories. I signed. I signed without reading the fine print. I signed because I trusted him, because he was my son, because love doesn't read contracts. 6 months later, they were back. This time it was the car, a sleek black SUV. It cost $20,000. "We need you to make the initial payment, Mama. Just $8,000. We promise we'll pay you back in 6 months. I took the money out of my savings I'd scraped together cleaning houses, ironing other people's clothes, taking double shifts when my bones were crying out for rest. $8,000. I handed it over with a smile, because that's what mothers do. We give. We always give. 6 months turned into a year. A year turned into never. Then came the emergencies, small at first. "Mama, the water heater broke. It's $200. "Mama, Tiffany needs dental work. That's $2,000. "Mama, the kids need new clothes for school. $500. And I paid. I always paid. Because every time I hesitated, Jamal would say something like, "Don't you trust me? Don't you want your grandkids to have the best? I thought you were different, Mama. I thought you supported us." Guilt. That was their favorite instrument. They played me like an out-of-tune piano, and I sounded exactly the way they wanted. But it wasn't just the money. It was everything else. The calls that only came when they needed something, the invitations that never arrived, the birthdays where I wasn't welcome because Tiffany had invited her fancy friends and I just didn't fit into their world of champagne flutes and designer dresses. I wore the same gray dress I'd had for 10 years, the same one I wore to Jamal's wedding, the same one Tiffany had glanced at with contempt once and muttered something about charity and thrift stores. But I kept quiet because that's what I had learned. In my family, kindness was an invisible leash, and I wore it, thinking it was a pearl necklace. The visits became less frequent, then non-existent. They only called to ask for money or to watch the kids when they had better plans. I was the free babysitter, the emergency credit card, the convenient solution. I was never invited to dinner, never part of the family photos they posted on social media. I only existed in the margins, in the shadows, in the bank receipts. And still, I kept paying, kept smiling, kept saying yes. Until that December afternoon. I arrived with gifts, with wine, with hope. I had bought toys for my grandkids, expensive perfume for Tiffany, a silk tie for Jamal. I spent over $1,000, money I didn't really have, but it was Christmas, and Christmas was for family. I rang the doorbell. The snow was falling softly. Everything looked perfect, like a picture postcard. Jamal opened the door, but he didn't smile. He looked at me like I was a stranger, like I wasn't the woman who spent 30 hours in labor bringing him into this world, like I wasn't the one who skipped meals so he could eat, like I was nothing. Behind him, the house glowed. Gold lights, a huge tree decorated with elegant silver ornaments and garlands, the smell of roast turkey and cinnamon, laughter, soft music. It was the kind of scene you see in the movies, the perfect family, the perfect Christmas. But I wasn't in that movie. Tiffany appeared behind Jamal. She wore a wine-colored dress, elegant, expensive, probably bought with the money I'd sent last month for the kids' supposed piano lessons. She looked me up and down. Her eyes stopped at my old coat, my worn shoes, the bag of gifts I carried with such enthusiasm, and she smiled. But it wasn't a warm smile. It was the kind you give to someone who's about to get bad news. "Jamal," I said, "Merry Christmas, honey. I brought gifts for everyone. I thought we could have dinner together." He didn't answer right away. He just looked at me, and in that silence, I heard everything I didn't want to hear. I heard years of contempt, indifference, and exploitation. "Mama," he began. His voice was cold, controlled. "I don't think it's a good idea for you to come in." The words hit me like invisible fists. "Excuse me." Tiffany stepped closer, placing her hand on Jamal's shoulder, a territorial, possessive gesture. "Celeste," she said. She used my name, not Mama, not mother-in-law. Just my name, like I was an employee who showed up on the wrong day. "We have important guests tonight," she continued. "People from Jamal's office, his boss, clients. It's a business dinner, you understand? It's not really a family gathering." I looked at Jamal, waiting for him to say something, to defend me, to say I was his mother and had a right to be there. But he just looked away, a coward. "What about the children?" I asked. My voice trembled, but I tried to keep it steady. "At least let me give them their presents. They're my grandkids." Tiffany sighed, as if I were a problem she had to patiently solve. "The kids are busy. Besides, they have too many toys already. They don't need more." She took the bag from my hands, opened it, looked at the contents, and I saw her expression change to clear disdain. "These? Plastic toys? Celeste, we buy quality things for our children. This is, well, it's a little common." Common. That word pierced my chest like a rusty knife. Jamal finally spoke, and when he did, he destroyed what little was left of my heart. "Mama, look, it's not personal, but Christmas ain't no place for losers. Tonight is important for us, for our future. We can't have, well, we can't give the wrong impression." "Losers," I repeated the word like it was poison in my mouth. He shrugged. "You know what I mean. You live in that small apartment, you clean houses for work. You're not successful. And the people coming today, they're important. They have standards." Tiffany nodded. "It's just for tonight, Celeste. You surely understand. We don't want you to feel uncomfortable. You'd be out of place." Out of place. In the house I helped buy, with money I had sent, eating food I probably paid for without knowing it. I looked at my son. I searched his eyes for a glimmer of the child who used to hug me and tell me I was the best mom in the world. But there was nothing there. Just coldness, just shame. Shame of me, of the woman who sacrificed everything so he could have a better life. Then Tiffany leaned in to gently close the door. "Maybe it's better if you spend Christmas at your place alone. It's more appropriate for someone in your situation." And before I could answer, the door closed softly, slowly, like the lid of a coffin. I stood there in the cold, the bag of gifts still in my hands. Snow fell on my head, on my shoulders, on my broken heart. I could hear the laughter inside, the clinking of glasses, the festive music. Life was going on, and I was no longer a part of it. I walked to my car, each step heavy as lead. I opened the door, sat down, left the gifts on the passenger seat, and for a moment I just sat there breathing, trying to process what had just happened. I didn't cry yet. Not yet. I started the engine and drove in silence. The streets were decorated with Christmas lights. Families walked hand in hand, children laughed. Everyone seemed to belong somewhere but me. I reached my apartment, went up the stairs, opened the door, and turned on the light. There was my life. Small, modest, solitary. I took off my coat, made myself a cup of tea, and sat by the window. Finally the tears came, silent, bitter, hot. I cried for the daughter I was, for the mother I wanted to be, for the grandma they never let me be. But most of all, I cried for the fool I had become, the fool who believed that love could be bought with sacrifice, the fool who thought that giving and giving and giving would eventually earn me a place in their lives. That night, I didn't sleep. I stayed awake, staring at the ceiling, thinking, remembering, connecting the dots. With every memory, the clarity grew, like the sunrise after the darkest night, slow but inevitable. I remembered the first time Jamal asked me for money after getting married. $200 for an emergency. He never told me what the emergency was, and I never asked. I remembered when he stopped calling me Mama and started calling me Celeste, as if the title were too intimate, too compromising. I remembered all the times Tiffany made comments about my clothes, my hair, the way I spoke, always disguised as concern, always poisoned with contempt. I remembered the forgotten birthdays, the unreturned calls, the broken promises, and I remembered the money. So much money. Thousands and thousands of dollars that slipped from my hands into theirs like water running between fingers, invisible but constant. The mortgage I secretly paid when they fell behind. The $600 a month I sent as if it were my duty. The auto insurance, the house repairs, the kids' classes, everything. And then I understood. I wasn't his mother. I was his bank. I wasn't his mom. I was his resource. And resources are used, exploited, and discarded when they are no longer useful. That realization didn't come as a scream. It came as a whisper, cold, clear, true. I got up from the chair, walked to my desk, and opened my laptop. The screen glowed in the darkness of my apartment. I logged into my bank account, and there it was. The complete list of my own financial enslavement. Automatic transfer to Jamal Jakes, $600 every month for 5 years, $36,000. Shared mortgage payment, $450 every month because I was the co-signer, and when they didn't pay in full, the bank charged me. Auto insurance, $70 monthly. Family dental plan, $80. And the list went on, like an endless drain. I moved the cursor, letting it hover over the cancel button, and took a deep breath. There was no anger, no vengeance, only peace. The kind of peace that comes when you finally stop bleeding. I clicked. Cancel. The word appeared on the screen like a final sentence. Are you sure you want to cancel this automatic transfer? Yes. Cancel. Another click, another cancellation, and another, and another. Each click sounded like a door closing. But this time it wasn't me who was left outside. This time it was me closing the door from the inside, from my side, from my peace. Automatic transfer to Jamal Jakes. Canceled. Shared mortgage payment. Canceled. Auto insurance for Jamal Jakes and Tiffany Jakes. Canceled. Family dental plan, canceled. Gym membership that Tiffany insisted was for her mental health, canceled. One by one, methodically, without hurry, without rage, just with the precision of a surgeon finally excising a tumor that had been growing for years. It took me exactly 5 minutes to dismantle 5 years of exploitation. When I finished, I closed the laptop. I sat in the silence of my apartment. The city slept outside. The snow continued to fall. And for the first time in years, I felt something strange in my chest, something I had forgotten. Lightness, as if I had been carrying rocks in my pockets and had finally let them drop, as if I had been breathing underwater and had finally surfaced. I didn't regret it for a second. I made another cup of tea, sat by the window, and waited. I didn't wait for their call. I didn't wait for their repentance. I just waited for the dawn, because I knew that when that sun came up, I would be different. I would be free. Christmas passed alone. I ate a simple soup, watched an old movie on TV. I went to bed and slept better than I had in months, because there were no expectations to meet, no calls to wait for, no disappointments to swallow. There was only silence. And silence, I discovered, can be the most beautiful sound in the world. The following days were strangely calm. New Year's came and went. I toasted alone with a glass of juice. I laughed at the absurdity of it all and made myself a promise. This year wouldn't be the year of giving. It would be the year of living. January brought cold, and with the cold came the bills. The bills that I used to pay before they even knew about them. The bills that would now fall directly into their mailbox, into their hands, into their reality. The mortgage was the first. The $300 extra I covered every month because they always came up short. The bank doesn't forgive. The bank doesn't listen to excuses. The bank only sees numbers, and when the numbers don't add up, the bank acts. Then the car. The insurance expired, and without insurance, the car isn't legal. No way for Jamal to drive his sleek black SUV to work. No way for Tiffany to go to her lunches with friends, showing off her perfect life. Then the small things, the gym, the dental plan, the streaming subscription that I paid for and they enjoyed. Everything vanished like smoke. And I did nothing but live my life. I went to the market and bought food for myself, not for others' emergencies. I paid my own bills, not anyone else's. I bought myself a book, one I'd wanted to read for years but never had the money to buy because I was always sending it somewhere else. I sat on my small couch and read page after page, without interruptions, without calls asking for favors, without guilt gnawing at my stomach. It was peace, simple and silent, mine. But I knew that peace wouldn't last, because bills don't forgive, and reality eventually knocks on the door. It always does. It was a Tuesday, mid-January, 14 days after I canceled everything. My phone rang. Jamal's number. I watched it vibrate on the table. I didn't answer. It rang again, and again. I let it ring. Each chime was music to my ears because it meant there were finally consequences. Finally, gravity was doing its job. Then came the messages, dozens of them, one after another, like a desperate river seeking an outlet. "Mama, where are you? Call me. It's urgent." Another message. "Mama, I need to talk to you. It's important." Another. "Why aren't you answering? Are you okay?" The concern was false. I knew it. It wasn't concern for me. It was concern for his situation, for his comfort, for his castle that was beginning to crumble. I didn't reply. I deleted the messages without reading them completely because it wasn't my problem anymore. It wasn't my responsibility to hold up his world while they destroyed mine. 2 days later, they knocked on my door. It was evening. I was reading my book, quiet. The doorbell rang insistently, desperately. I looked through the peephole. It was Jamal. He had dark circles under his eyes. His hair was messy. He looked tired, worried, almost human. Almost. "Mama, I know you're in there. Please, I need to talk to you." His voice carried through the door. "I need you to help me. It's an emergency." Emergency. That word he'd used so many times to open my wallet. That magic word that turned my money into his. But this time, it didn't work. I stayed on the other side of the door, silent, invisible, free. "Mama, please. The bank called me. They say the mortgage is late, that if I don't pay this week, they'll start the foreclosure process. I don't understand what happened. You always paid your part." Your part. As if the house were mine too. as if I lived there, as if I enjoyed those walls that were slammed in my face. I need $8,000 now, this week, or we lose the house. Do you hear me? We're going to lose the house. His voice rose, panic, real, raw, and I stayed silent, breathing softly, feeling every word bounce off the door and fall to the floor, words that no longer reached me, that no longer hurt me. Tiffany and the kids have nowhere to go. Is that what you want? Your grandkids out on the street? Manipulation, the last resort, using the kids as a shield, just like always. But I remembered. I remembered Tiffany telling me the toys I brought were common. I remembered they wouldn't even let me see them at Christmas. I remembered that those grandkids were a convenient excuse, not a reality I could touch. "Mama, open the door." His voice changed. It was no longer a plea, it was a demand, as if he still had rights over me, as if he could still order me around. He hit the door hard. "I know you're in there. Open up now." I didn't open it. I got up from the couch, turned off the light, walked to my room, closed the door, lay down in my bed, and listened as he kept hitting, shouting, demanding. Eventually, he got tired. Eventually, he left. And I fell asleep, deeply, without nightmares. The following days were a symphony of desperation. Calls, messages, emails, even messages from Tiffany. "Celeste, we need to talk like adults. This is ridiculous. Jamal told me you two had a misunderstanding, but you can't punish the whole family for that." Misunderstanding. They called telling me I was a loser, slamming the door, and treating me like trash, a misunderstanding. Another message from Tiffany. "The kids miss you. They ask about you." That's a lie, isn't it? Because if they missed me, they would have let me see them at Christmas. If they asked about me, they would have called. Another message. "Look, I know things were said wrong, but you have to understand Jamal was stressed. He didn't mean it. Come home, let's talk. Let's fix this." Fix this, as if it were something I broke, as if it were my responsibility to glue the pieces of their perfect life back together. I didn't respond to any of them because I had finally learned something. Silence is power. Saying no without saying anything at all is the cruelest revenge. Stopping being indispensable is the sweetest freedom. I continued with my life, small, quiet, mine. And as they sank into their own mess, I flourished in my silence like a plant finally receiving sun after years in the shade. 3 weeks passed, 3 weeks of absolute silence from me, 3 weeks of chaos on their end, and I knew it. Even though I didn't answer, even though I didn't open the door, even though I deleted every message unread, I knew their world was falling apart because I had been the invisible glue holding it together. And without glue, everything falls. One February afternoon, while having coffee in my little kitchen, I heard voices outside my building. Familiar voices, arguing, yelling. I peeked out the window. It was Jamal and Tiffany, fighting in the street. He was gesticulating desperately. She was crying, but it wasn't the crying of sadness. It was the crying of rage, of frustration, the kind of crying that comes when things don't go your way. "Your mother is ruining us," Tiffany yelled. "You have to do something. Talk to her. Beg her. I don't care, but we need that money." "You think I haven't tried?" Jamal retorted. "She doesn't answer. She won't open the door. It's like she vanished." "Then go to her job. Look for her there. Wait outside. I don't know. Do something, because I am not going back to living in a small apartment, not after everything we've achieved." Everything we've achieved. As if it were their effort. As if my money hadn't been the foundation of every single inch of that success. I watched them from above, like distant gods observing mortals, without intervening, without compassion, just watching. Tiffany wiped her tears. Her makeup was smeared. She no longer looked elegant. She looked desperate. "The bank gave us until Friday. If we don't pay $8,000, they start the foreclosure process." $8,000, Jamal. Where are we going to get it? My salary barely covers expenses. You spent the whole year-end bonus on that trip to Miami. It was for our anniversary to maintain our relationship. Our relationship won't matter if we don't have a roof over our heads." They looked at each other with hatred, the kind of hatred that is born when two people realize they have built their life on sand and the tide has finally come in. "Then ask your mother for it. Literally crawl if you have to, because I am not going back to living small, not after all we've accomplished." They eventually left. They got into their car, the car that no longer had insurance, the car they technically couldn't legally drive, and drove away. I returned to my coffee, which was now cold, but I didn't care. I drank it anyway because even cold coffee tasted like victory. That night, I received an email from Tiffany, long, desperate, full of words that tried to sound sincere but smelled of lies. "Dear Celeste, I know things between us haven't been perfect, and I admit we may not have valued you as we should, but we are family, and families forgive, families help each other. The children ask about you every day. They cry. They say they want their grandma. I don't know what to tell them. I don't know how to explain why you don't come around anymore. We need you, not just financially. We need you here with us. Please come home. Let's talk. Let's fix this. With love, Tiffany." I read every word, every carefully constructed lie, every manipulation disguised as affection, and I deleted the email without replying, without hesitation. Because I had learned to read between the lines, and between those lines, there was only one truth. We need you financially. The rest was decoration. Friday arrived, the bank's deadline. I didn't do anything special. I went to the market and bought fresh vegetables, newly baked bread, a small bouquet of flowers for my table, simple things, things that made me happy. As I walked back home, my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. Something told me I should. "Celeste Jakes?" A professional, formal voice. "Yes, that's me." "This is Ms. Davis from Metropolitan Bank. I'm calling about the property at 422 Maple Drive. You are listed as a co-signer and guarantor on the mortgage." My heart sped up. "Yes, I know. I was called weeks ago. I understand." "I am informing you that the primary title holders, Mr. Jamal Jakes and Ms. Tiffany Jakes, have failed to make this month's payment. According to the contract, you, as the co-signer, are responsible for covering the debt in case of default. The amount due is $4,300. Do you wish to make the payment?" I took a deep breath. This was the final decision, the last chance to go back, to be the mother I had always been, the one who rescues, the one who saves, the one who sacrifices. But it was also the chance to be something new, something I had never been, free. "No," I said. My voice was firm, clear. "I will not be making the payment." There was silence on the other end. "I understand. Then I must inform you that this will affect your credit history. The foreclosure process will begin next week." "I understand. I accept the consequences." "Are you sure? This is a serious decision." "I am completely sure." "Very well. We will send you the corresponding documentation. Have a good day." She hung up, and I stood there in the middle of the street with my market bags, my flowers, and my freedom. I smiled because I had finally done something I never thought I could do. I said no, and the world didn't end. The sky didn't fall. I just continued walking home. That night, I cooked a real meal for myself, with time, with love. I put on soft music, lit a candle, served myself on my best plate, and ate dinner alone. But I didn't feel alone. I felt complete. The next day, Saturday, I received an unexpected visit. An early knock on my door. I opened it without looking. Mistake. It was Jamal, but not the arrogant Jamal from Christmas. This Jamal was broken. Red eyes, unshaven beard, wrinkled clothes. He smelled of desperation. "Mama," he whispered, "please, I need to talk to you." I tried to close the door, but he put his foot in the way, not with violence, but with a plea. "Please, just 5 minutes, I beg you." Something in his voice stopped me. It wasn't the voice of the man who called me a loser. It was the voice of the boy I once held. So, and only then, I let him in. He entered like an invader in strange territory, looking at my small apartment as if seeing it for the first time. Maybe he was. Maybe he had never paid attention before. He sat on my couch, buried his face in his hands, and cried. It wasn't manipulative crying. It was real, broken, desperate crying. "We lost everything," he said through sobs. "The house, the car. Tiffany left me. She took the kids to her mother's. She says I'm a failure, that I can't support my family, that this is my fault." He lifted his head and looked at me with pleading eyes. "Mama, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for what I said. I'm sorry for how I treated you. I'm sorry for everything, but please help me. I need money for an apartment, to start over, to get my family back." I sat in front of him, calm, observing him as one observes a wounded animal, with pity, but without the urgency to rescue. "How much do you need?" I asked. 10,000, maybe 15, for the deposit and first month for basic furniture, to show Tiffany I can fix this. $15,000. Almost half of everything I had left in savings. Everything I had managed to save after years of giving them everything. "No," I said. Simple, direct. He blinked as if he hadn't heard correctly. "What?" "I'm not going to give you money, Jamal." His expression changed. Confusion, then anger. "How can you say that? I'm your son, your only son." "Exactly. You are my son, not my owner, not my purpose, not my reason to empty my life. But I need you. And I needed you at Christmas. I needed you when I was 64 years old and showed up with gifts and hope. But you told me I was a loser, that I wasn't worthy of being in your house. That was a mistake. I was stressed. I didn't think." A mistake. I clung to that word. A mistake that cost me years of dignity. A mistake that showed me exactly what I was to you. A walking bank account. "Mama, please, you're not going to leave me on the street." "You left me on the street first. Only my street was emotional, and it hurt more." He stood up, trembling with rage. "You're selfish, a bitter old woman. You're going to regret this." "Maybe. But it will be my regret, not yours." He stormed out, slamming the door, and I sat there on my couch, feeling the echo of his words. Selfish, bitter. Maybe he was right. But if being selfish meant loving myself for the first time in decades, then I would be selfish. And if being bitter meant not letting myself be used anymore, then I would be bitter. Because I had finally understood something. True love doesn't empty you. It fills you. And what I had with my son wasn't love. It was a transaction. And transactions end when one party stops paying. I stopped paying. The days after that visit were strange. I didn't feel the guilt I expected. I didn't wake up at night thinking I had been cruel. I didn't regret closing the door on him, because I had finally understood something fundamental. Saying no didn't make me a bad mother. It made me a human being, and human beings have limits. February turned into March. The snow slowly melted, the streets filled with that gray mud left behind when winter leaves, but spring hasn't quite arrived. I continued my routine: work, market, reading, peace. But something was changing, not outside, but inside. I looked in the mirror and saw someone different, calmer, firmer. As if I had taken off a costume I had worn for decades, the costume of the perfect mother, the savior, the one who always says yes. Now I was just Celeste, without surnames, without titles, without obligations I hadn't chosen. One afternoon, while cleaning the house of Mrs. Holloway, my longest-standing client, she offered me tea. We sat in her bright kitchen. She was in her 80s, a widow, with 3 children who visited every Sunday without fail. "You look different, Celeste," she said. "Lighter, as if you left something heavy somewhere." I smiled. "Something like that. Family issues." I nodded. I didn't say more, but she understood. She had that wisdom that only years provide. "Let me tell you something," she said. "When my children were young, I gave everything too. My time, my money, my life. I thought that was love. But one day, my husband told me something that changed everything. He said, 'The love that empties you isn't love, it's sacrifice. And sacrifice only works when it's mutual.'" Her words pierced my chest. And what did you do? I learned to say no. I learned that being a good mother doesn't mean being a martyr mother. And you know what happened? My children respected me more because I finally had something they couldn't take: my dignity. I drank my tea in silence, processing, healing. You did the right thing, Celeste. Whatever you did the right thing. I left that house with something new in my chest. Validation, not from my son, not from Tiffany, but from someone who had walked the same path and survived, who had flourished. That night, I received a message, but not from Jamal. It was from Tiffany. Celeste, I need to talk to you. It's about the children. It's urgent. Please, respond. The children. Always the children. The perfect shield. The infallible excuse. But this time I replied, not for her, but out of curiosity. What happened? Thank you for answering. Look, I know things are bad between us, but the kids are suffering. They don't understand why we lost the house, why Daddy doesn't live with us anymore, why everything changed. And they ask about you. They say they want to see their grandma. I read the message 3 times, looking for the manipulation, and I found it in every word. If the children ask about me, you can give them my address. They can come whenever they want, but you and Jamal are not welcome. There was a long pause. Then the response arrived. That is cruel. They are small children. They can't come alone. Then they don't ask about me as much as you say. This is absurd. You are a bitter woman. Perhaps. But I am a bitter woman with money in the bank. Can you say the same? There were no more replies. I blocked the number because I had understood something else. The children were real. Their love was probably real too, but they were being used as a tool, as leverage. And I wasn't going to let myself be moved by that leverage. If those children truly needed me someday, I would be there. But I wasn't going to support a whole dysfunctional family just to have access to my grandkids. That wasn't love. It was blackmail. March advanced. One day, while walking through the park near my apartment, I saw something that stopped me cold. It was Jamal, sitting on a bench, alone, staring into space. He looked terrible, thinner, older, as if he had aged 10 years in 2 months. Part of me wanted to go over, ask if he was okay, offer help, because maternal instincts don't turn off like a switch. They stay there, murmuring, pushing. But I didn't move. I stayed behind a tree, watching, as if I were a stranger looking at a man I didn't know. Then I saw something else. A woman approached. No, not Tiffany. Another woman, older, elegant, with perfectly styled gray hair. She sat down next to him. They talked. Jamal gesticulated, explaining. The woman nodded, looking serious. Then she pulled out an envelope and gave it to him. Jamal opened it. I saw his expression change. Surprise, relief. The woman stood up, patted his shoulder, and left. Jamal stayed there, looking at the envelope, and for just a moment, I saw something on his face. Not gratitude, not joy, something darker. Calculation. I left before he saw me, with questions, with doubts, but also with confirmation. My son was looking for another Celeste, another ATM, because he hadn't learned anything, hadn't changed anything. He was just looking for his next source. That night I couldn't sleep, not out of guilt, but out of curiosity. Who was that woman? What was in that envelope? Why did I still care? 2 days later, the answer arrived. A knock on my door. I opened it. It was a woman, the same one from the park. Celeste Jakes? She asked. Yes, my name is Ms. Evelyn. I'm your son's neighbor, well, ex-neighbor, from when he still had a house. I let her in, cautious, confused. She sat down, refused the tea I offered, and got straight to the point. I need to tell you something. Something your son doesn't want you to know. My stomach tightened. Go on. For the last year, I've seen things. I lived, in the house next door. Thin walls, close windows. You hear things. You see things. Tiffany has a compulsive shopping problem. I saw the deliveries every day. Boxes, bags, packages from expensive stores, clothes, shoes, purses, things she never uses, she just buys. That's none of my business, I said, though I felt that it absolutely was. There's more. Ms. Evelyn took a deep breath. Jamal told me you were helping them financially, that you sent money every month, money that was supposedly for the children, for their needs. I nodded. $600 a month. She shook her head. The children went to public school, wore normal clothes, ate well, but not extravagantly. That money wasn't going to them. Where was it going then? Tiffany has 3 credit cards in her name, all maxed out, $40,000 in debt. Jamal didn't know about it until the bank rejected his mortgage refinancing application. That's when he discovered everything. She was using the mortgage money to pay the credit card minimums, juggling, robbing one place to cover another. That's why they lost the house, not just because you stopped helping, but because she was feeding her addiction. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Because I saw him in the park today, trying to manipulate me, asking me for money, saying you were a cruel mother who abandoned them, that everything was your fault. And I know that story, because I was you 20 years ago. I looked at her, really looked at her, and I saw invisible scars. I saw wisdom bought with pain. I gave him $1,000, she confessed. I told him it was the last of it, not to come looking for me again. But I know he will be back, because people like Jamal and Tiffany don't change. They just change victims. She stood up, leaving a card on my table. If you need to talk, if you need confirmation that you did the right thing, call me. She left, and I was left with the truth, a truth I didn't ask for, but needed. My money was never for the children. It was never for needs. It was to fuel Tiffany's addiction, to sustain a lie, to finance an illusion. And Jamal allowed it, facilitated it, used me as the solution. That night, I wrote in a notebook, something I hadn't done since I was young. I wrote everything, the anger, the pain, the liberation. And at the end, I wrote something that surprised me. I forgive them. Not because they deserve it, but because I deserve peace. April arrived with rain, the gentle kind that washes the streets and leaves everything smelling new. I continued my quiet, firm life, but something had changed after Ms. Evelyn's visit. It wasn't rage. It was final clarity. Jamal wasn't a victim. He was an accomplice. That truth hurt more than any insult, because it's one thing to be used, and another to realize they always knew they were using you and allowed it, facilitated it, enjoyed it. One morning, while having coffee, I received a call from a number I didn't recognize. I hesitated, but something told me to answer. Ms. Jakes? A serious professional male voice. Yes, this is me. This is Mr. Carter. I'm an attorney representing Metropolitan Bank in the foreclosure case on the Maple Drive property. You are listed as a co-signer. My heart sped up slightly. I know. I was called weeks ago. I understand. I'm calling because there's new information I believe you should know. Could we meet? It's important. What is it about? I prefer to speak in person. It's delicate. Something in his tone made me say yes. We agreed to meet at a public cafe the next day. Neutral, safe. That night, I didn't sleep well. Not out of fear, but out of anticipation. Like when you know something big is about to be revealed, but you don't know if it will be good or bad. I arrived at the cafe 15 minutes early, ordered tea, sat by the window and watched the street. Mr. Carter arrived promptly. Gray suit, discreet tie, leather briefcase. He looked like someone who knew secrets, many secrets. Ms. Jakes, thank you for coming. He sat down across from me, ordered coffee, and waited for the waitress to leave before speaking. I'm going to be direct. During the account review process related to the foreclosure, we found irregularities. What kind of irregularities? He pulled documents from his briefcase and placed them on the table. When you signed as co-signer 5 years ago, you also signed bank authorizations. Do you remember? Vaguely. I signed a lot of papers that day. One of those authorizations allowed your son and daughter-in-law to access information about your bank accounts for income verification purposes, as per the contract. The problem is, they used that authorization for something more. Mr. Carter pointed to numbers in the documents. For the past 3 years, your son Jamal has been checking your bank statements monthly, sometimes weekly. Checking? Why? To know exactly how much money you had available. To calculate how much they could ask you for without leaving you completely without funds. To maximize their extraction. The words fell like stones. Extraction. As if I were an oil well, a natural resource to be exploited. There's more. He turned another document. 18 months ago, when you sent $8,000 for the supposed initial car payment, that money never went to the car. The car was already paid for. It was used, and it cost $20,000. They had $18,000 saved from a bonus of Jamal's. They only needed $2,000 more, but they asked you for $8,000. The other $6,000 disappeared into various purchases. Restaurants, clothes, a weekend at a spa. You financed Tiffany's lifestyle without knowing it. I felt nauseous, not with sadness, but with pure crystalline rage. How did you get this information? I asked. I'm the bank's lawyer, but I'm also a father, and what I saw in these documents felt like financial abuse. So I investigated more than my job required because I wanted you to know the truth. Why me? My mother went through something similar with my brother. She died thinking she had been a bad mother because she refused to keep giving him money. She never knew my brother had been systematically manipulating her. I regret not having told her. The silence between us was heavy, full of similar stories of mothers used, of children who forgot that love is not a transaction. There is something else, he continued, something you need to know before making any decisions. When your son applied for the mortgage loan, he had to declare his income and expenses. In the family support section, he declared that you sent him $600 a month. That improved his income profile, allowing him to qualify for a larger loan. They used my generosity as a tool to go into more debt. So they built their life on the assumption that I would keep paying forever? Exactly. And when you stopped sending money, they didn't just lose your support. They lost the money the bank expected to keep flowing. That's why they went into default so quickly. What are my options? I asked. Legally, as a co-signer, you are responsible for the debt. But given the evidence of financial manipulation and unauthorized access to confidential information, we could argue fraud. We could request that your name be removed from the contract, and they would remain responsible for the total debt. The bank would foreclose, they would lose any equity they had built, and their credit would be destroyed for years. And my credit? If we win the case, it would be clean, as if you had never been a part of this. I looked out the window. The rain had started again, drops running down the glass like tears that were not mine. What do you recommend? I asked. Mr. Carter leaned back in his chair. I cannot make that decision for you, but I can tell you this. You have the right to protect yourself. You have the right not to carry the consequences of others' irresponsible decisions, even if those others are your family. Family. That word that had been my chain for years. I want to proceed, I said. I want my name removed. I want to be free of this. He nodded. I will start the process tomorrow. I will need you to sign some documents and you'll need to prepare yourself. For what? For your son's reaction. When he finds out you are taking legal action against him, it won't be pleasant. I don't care about being pleasant anymore. I just want to be free. Mr. Carter smiled slightly. Those are the words of someone who has finally understood her value. I walked out of that cafe different from how I walked in, not lighter, but stronger, because I finally had something I had never had: information, power, agency. I wasn't a victim of circumstances. I was the architect of my own liberation. The following days were paperwork, signatures, declarations. Mr. Carter was efficient, meticulous. Every document he showed me was another piece of evidence, another proof that my son had used me in a calculated way. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't need. It was a system. A week later, Jamal received the legal notification. Mr. Carter warned me the reaction would come, but nothing prepared me for the intensity. My phone exploded, 50 calls in an hour, furious messages, insults, accusations. "You're a traitor. You're destroying me. How can you do this to your own son? I hate you. I wish you were never my mother." I read every message, felt every word like a blow. But this time I didn't bleed. This time I had armor, because I had finally understood something fundamental. True love doesn't destroy, doesn't manipulate, doesn't extract. And what I had with my son wasn't love. It was toxic dependence. It was exploitation disguised as filial duty. Tiffany wrote too, but her message was different, more calculated. "Celeste, I know you're angry, but think about the kids. If you do this, they will grow up knowing their grandma destroyed their family. Is that how you want to be remembered? As the villain?" The villain. Interesting how in their narrative, I was the bad guy. Not them for lying, not them for stealing, not them for using me. Me, for defending myself. I replied only once to Tiffany, brief, direct. "The children deserve to know the truth, and when they are older, I will be here to tell them, but you won't be in that conversation." I blocked both numbers, because I had learned you can't reason with people who see you as a resource. You can only walk away and build high walls, walls with doors, but doors that only I control. May brought sun, the kind of sun that warms without burning, that invites you to go out, to live, and for the first time in a long time, I wanted to live, not just survive, not just exist, to truly live. The legal process moved forward. Mr. Carter kept me informed. Each update was one more step towards freedom, but it was also one more step towards the inevitable, the final confrontation. Jamal requested a meeting through his own lawyer. They wanted to negotiate. They wanted me to drop the lawsuit. In exchange for what? They didn't specify, but I knew. In exchange for nothing. They just wanted me to be the old Celeste again, the one who gave in, the one who forgave, the one who paid. I accepted the meeting, but not for them, for me, because I needed to look them in the eyes one last time. I needed to say things I had kept inside for years. I needed to close that door with my own hands. The meeting was in Mr. Carter's office, neutral, professional, with witnesses. I arrived 10 minutes early, dressed in my best clothes. They weren't expensive clothes, but they were mine, bought with my money, earned with my effort, and that made me feel powerful. Jamal arrived with Tiffany. They looked tired, defeated, but also furious, like cornered animals. We sat on opposite sides of a large table, Mr. Carter on my right, their lawyer, Mr. Sterling, on their left, like a miniature Cold War. Mr. Sterling spoke first, grave voice, expensive suit. "Ms. Jakes, we are here to find a solution that benefits everyone, especially the children." The children, again, the favorite human shield. Mr. Carter interrupted. "Before talking about solutions, let's establish the facts. Your client used my client's confidential financial information without explicit consent. Your client lied about the destination of requested funds. Your client built a debt based on income that was not theirs. Those are the facts." Mr. Sterling shifted uncomfortably. "Those are interpretations. My client acted in good faith. He believed he had implicit authorization." "There is no such thing as implicit authorization in bank contracts," Mr. Carter replied. "There are only signed documents, and the documents show abuse." Tiffany leaned forward. Her voice trembled, not with sadness, but with contained rage. "This is ridiculous! Celeste, you're his mother! Mothers are supposed to help their children, not sue them." I stayed silent, breathing, controlled. Jamal spoke. His voice was different, more calculated. "Mama, I know things got out of control. I know we made mistakes, but this is too much. You're destroying your own family." "My family," I repeated. My voice was calm, cold. "Where was my family at Christmas? Where was my family when you called me a loser? Where was my family every time you needed money, but never time with me?" "That was a mistake, I already told you." "A mistake that cost $36,000 in direct transfers, $8,000 in phantom car payments, countless emergencies that were never emergencies. It wasn't a mistake, Jamal. It was a system, wasn't it?" "That's not fair. You misunderstand everything." Mr. Carter placed documents on the table. Bank statements, emails, bank access records. "It's all here in black and white. There's no possible misunderstanding." Mr. Sterling looked at the documents. His expression changed. I saw the exact moment he realized his case was weak. Very weak. Tiffany hit the table. "This is a trap. You brought us here to humiliate us." "No," I said. "I brought you here so you could hear something I need to say so I can move on." The room fell silent. Everyone was looking at me, waiting. For 64 years, I lived for others. First for my parents, then for you, Jamal. I always thought that was love. I thought sacrificing myself would make me loved, needed, important. I was wrong. True love doesn't empty you. It doesn't exploit. It doesn't lie. And what you gave me wasn't love. It was convenience. I was useful, and when I stopped being useful, I was disposable. That's not true. We love you. You love me, or you love what I can give you? Because when I had nothing left to give, suddenly I wasn't welcome, not even at Christmas. Jamal looked down. Tiffany crossed her arms. No one responded, because there was no answer. There was only truth, and the truth hurt. "I am going ahead with the legal process," I continued. "Not for revenge, but for protection. Because I finally understood that I cannot save you from the consequences of your own decisions, and I shouldn't try." "And what about us?" Jamal asked. "What are we supposed to do?" "What all adults do, solve your problems without using others as a solution." "You're going to leave us with nothing." "You left yourselves with nothing. I just stopped being the patch that hid the problem." Tiffany stood up. Her eyes shone with tears, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were of rage. "You're selfish, a bitter old woman. I wish Jamal had never met you." "Me too," I replied, because maybe then he would have learned to stand on his own 2 feet. They stormed out, slamming the door, leaving venom in the air. Mr. Carter waited for their footsteps to fade away. "You did very well," he said. "I know that wasn't easy." "It wasn't, but it was necessary." "How do you feel?" I thought about the question. Honestly. Like I've finally stopped carrying something that was never mine. Like I've set boundaries I should have set decades ago. It feels like freedom. June arrived with heat. The legal process concluded. The judge reviewed the evidence, heard the arguments, and made a decision. My name was removed from the mortgage. The debt remained entirely in the hands of Jamal and Tiffany. My credit was cleared. I was free, legally, financially, emotionally. Mr. Carter called to give me the news. "Congratulations, Celeste. You won." Won. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like survival. That afternoon, I walked through the park, the same one where I had seen Jamal months ago. But now it was different. The trees were green, the flowers were blooming, children were playing, life was going on, and I was part of that life, not as a shadow, but as a real person. I sat on a bench, closed my eyes, felt the sun on my face, and for the first time in years, I smiled. A real smile, not forced, not to please anyone, just mine. Ms. Evelyn, the neighbor, found me there. We talked, and I realized something. I wasn't alone. There were other women who had walked this path, who had survived, who had flourished, and if they could, so could I. September brought unexpected changes. Mr. Carter called. He had news. Jamal had filed for personal bankruptcy. He would lose everything. The house was already foreclosed. The car had been repossessed. They were living in a small, cheap apartment, just like me. The irony wasn't lost on me. My son finally understood what my life was like, the life he had despised, the life of losers, as he called it. "How do you feel about it?" Mr. Carter asked. "I don't know. It's not satisfaction. It's not sadness. It's something in between. I also want you to know something else. During the bankruptcy process, Tiffany filed for divorce. Apparently, when the money ran out, the love did too. She took the children and went back to her mother's place in another state. Jamal is alone." The words hung in the air. Alone. Just as I had been. Just as he had left me at Christmas. The difference was that I chose my solitude. He did not choose his. It was a consequence. October brought colors. The leaves were turning, red, orange, yellow. Everything was dying to be reborn, and I felt I was in that process too, letting old versions of myself die, preparing to be reborn. One afternoon, while reading in my apartment, someone knocked on the door. A timid knock, not aggressive. I looked through the peephole. It was Jamal, alone, no Tiffany, no visible rage in his expression, just exhaustion. I didn't open immediately. I stayed there, looking at him through the small glass, seeing my son turned stranger. "Mama," he said. His voice was different, broken. "I know you're in there. I'm not here to ask for money. I just want to talk. 5 minutes, please." Something in his tone made me hesitate. I opened the door, but only a crack, with the chain still on, like opening it to a stranger. "What do you want?" "I just want to tell you something. Something I should have said months ago. You were right. About everything. I was an idiot, a manipulator, a bad son. And I'm sorry. I know sorry isn't enough. I know I destroyed something I can't repair. But I needed you to know I finally understood." Tears ran down his face. They weren't manipulative tears. They were real, raw, painful repentance. "I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect anything. I just wanted you to know that I finally get it." He turned, starting to walk toward the stairs. "Jamal," I called. He stopped, turning, hopeful. "Thank you for coming, for saying that. It means there's a possibility of—" "No," I interrupted. "It doesn't mean we go back to the way it was. That died. But it means I listened, and maybe with a lot of time and a lot of work, you might be able to rebuild something. Not with me, with yourself." He nodded. "I understand. And Jamal, one more thing. The children. Make sure they know I love them, that this wasn't about them. It was about boundaries, about respect, about dignity. I will tell them." He left, and I closed the door, this time without tears, without trembling hands, just with the feeling that something had ended. Not fixed, ended. And sometimes, ending is enough. November arrived with familiar cold, the kind of cold that announces the year is closing, that cycles are ending, that everything that began eventually finds its end. I had changed, not in an obvious way. It wasn't a dramatic movie transformation. It was something more useful, more profound. I had learned to listen to my own voice. That voice that for years had been drowned out by the needs of others, by expectations, by guilt. Now that voice was clear and said simple but powerful things. You matter. Your needs are valid. Saying no is okay. One morning, while having coffee by the window, I saw the first snowfall of the season. Soft flakes falling silently, covering everything with clean white, as if the world were giving itself another chance, as if it were saying, "What happened is over, but today is new." My phone rang. Unknown number. I hesitated, but I answered. Sometimes you have to answer to know what comes next. "Ms. Jakes?" A young professional female voice. "Yes, this is me. My name is Andrea. I'm a social worker with the Family Services Center. I'm calling because your name appeared as an emergency contact in the file for your grandchildren, Marcus and Kayla." My heart stopped. Did something happen to them? No, the children are physically fine, but there is a situation we need to discuss. Could you come to our office tomorrow? I accepted without thinking. Even though I had set limits with Jamal and Tiffany, the children were different. They didn't choose the situation. They were victims, just like I had been. The next day, I arrived at the office, a gray, functional building full of broken families trying to rebuild. Andrea received me. She was young, maybe 30, with kind but tired eyes, the kind of tiredness that comes from seeing a lot of pain. Ms. Jakes, the children have been living with their mother Tiffany and their maternal grandmother for 3 months. However, there have been incidents, violent arguments, emotional instability. The maternal grandmother has health issues and cannot care for them properly, and the father, Jamal, applied for shared custody, but it was temporarily denied. He lives in a small studio apartment, works double shifts, and doesn't have the stability for children. He is still in the process of financial recovery. So why are you calling me? Because Tiffany mentioned that you could be a temporary option, while she sorts out her situation. 3 months? Maybe 6. Just until she can find her own place and stabilize. I leaned back in the chair, processing. This was exactly what I had feared, that eventually they would need me again, that they would return, not with love, but with need. And if I say no? I asked. Andrea sighed. The children would likely enter the temporary care system, foster homes, separated from their mother, their father, from everything they know. Guilt began to climb up my throat. That familiar feeling, that weight. But this time, I recognized it and stopped it. I need to think about it, I said. I need time. I understand. But Ms. Jakes, these children need stability, and according to all reports, you are the only person in this family who has it. I left that office trembling, not with fear, but with rage, because once again, I was being put in the position of savior. Once again, my stability, built with so much effort, was being asked for as a sacrifice. I called Ms. Evelyn. I needed to talk to someone who understood. We met at a cafe. I told her everything. She listened without interrupting. Then she said something I didn't expect. What do you want to do? Not as a grandmother, not as Jamal's ex-victim. As Celeste. What does Celeste want? I thought about the question, honestly, deeply. I want to help the children, but I don't want to be used again. I don't want this to become another form of manipulation. Then set the terms, Ms. Evelyn said. If you're going to do it on your terms, not theirs. Legal temporary custody, documented with clear boundaries. No Tiffany or Jamal living with you, no extra money for them, only for the children. Supervised visits, mandatory family therapy. Everything legal, everything clear. I can do that. You can ask for whatever you want, and if they don't accept, then your answer is no. Simple. Her words gave me clarity, because she was right. I could help, but I didn't have to destroy myself doing it. That night, I wrote a list. My terms, my conditions, my boundaries, and they were firm, non-negotiable. The next day I called Andrea and explained my position. She listened, took notes, and said something that surprised me. Those are very reasonable terms, Ms. Jakes. In fact, they are exactly the kind of structure these children need. 2 weeks later, everything was legally arranged. Marcus and Kayla would come to live with me for 6 months. Documented temporary custody. Tiffany and Jamal would have supervised visits every 2 weeks. Mandatory family therapy for everyone. And I would receive state support for the children's expenses. I would not use my money to clean up others' mess. The day they arrived was strange, exciting and terrifying at the same time. Marcus came in first, shy, insecure, looking at my small apartment as if it were unknown territory. "Grandma," he said softly, "can we really stay?" "Yes, my love, for a while." Kayla, 5 years old, ran up to me. She hugged me tightly. "I missed you so much." And in that hug, I felt something break and heal at the same time. Because this was different. This wasn't for Jamal. It wasn't for Tiffany. It was for them. for two children who hadn't asked to be caught in the middle of broken adults. The first days were difficult. Marcus asked a lot of questions. Why don't we live with Mom? Why doesn't Dad come? Did we do something wrong? And I answered him with age-appropriate truth. Adults sometimes make mistakes, and when that happens, everyone needs time to fix things. But none of this is your fault. None of it. Slowly, we created a routine. Breakfast together, school, homework, dinner, bedtime stories. Small, simple things, but full of stability. The kind of stability they hadn't had in months. One night, while I was reading them a story, Marcus asked something that broke me. Grandma, why aren't Mom and Dad like you? What do you mean? You don't yell. You don't fight. You don't say mean things. They always do. I took a deep breath, searching for the right words. Some people haven't learned how to handle their problems in a healthy way. And when you don't know how to do it, you hurt others without meaning to. Sometimes even the people you love. They love you in their own way, yes, but love isn't always enough if you don't know how to express it without causing harm. Kayla snuggled up against me. I love you, Grandma, and you don't hurt me. Those words cured something I didn't know was broken, because they showed me that everything was worth it. Every no I said, every boundary I set, every door I closed, it all led to this moment where I could give them what they needed most, not money, peace. December arrived again, a full year since that Christmas, since that closed door, since those words that changed everything. This time, I decorated my apartment, not with expensive things, but with things made by the children. Drawings, paper ornaments, a small tree full of love. Tiffany and Jamal came for their supervised Christmas visit. It was awkward, tense, but civil. The children gave them handmade gifts. They brought toys and clumsy words of affection. When they left, Jamal stayed for a moment at the door. Thank you, Mama, he said, for doing this, for being what we couldn't be. I'm not doing this for you, I replied. I'm doing it for them. I know, and still thank you. He left, and I closed the door, but this time not with rage, but with peace, because I had finally found the balance. I could love my grandchildren without sacrificing myself. I could help without destroying myself. I could be a grandmother without being a victim. That night, after putting the children to bed, I sat by the window. The snow was falling softly again, exactly as it had fallen a year ago. But I was different. I was no longer the woman who rang that doorbell with gifts and hope. I was no longer the woman who accepted crumbs and called it love. I was no longer the woman who emptied herself to fill others. I was Celeste, simply Celeste, with boundaries, with dignity, with peace. And as I watched the silent snow fall, I understood a final thing. Maybe true revenge isn't destroying the one who hurt you. It's rebuilding yourself. It's finding peace while they face consequences. It's living well while they learn. Maybe the losers are just the people who stopped paying for everyone else's mistakes. And if that made me a loser, then I would lose with pride, because I had finally won something more valuable than their approval. I had won myself. You know, after everything that happened, I realized something simple but powerful. Peace doesn't come from fixing others. It comes from finally choosing yourself. For years I thought love meant sacrifice, but now I know love without respect isn't love at all. Sometimes life forces you to lose everything just to understand what truly matters. I lost a house, a family I thought I had, but I found something better, myself, and that's worth more than any comfort money could buy. To anyone listening who's ever been called not enough, remember this. You are not defined by what others take from you. You are defined by what you decide to keep. Your dignity, your calm, your freedom. If my story touched your heart or made you think, show it by liking this video. Let's see how many of us are out there. I'd love to know from which city and at what time are you listening to me? Leave a comment below. And if you'd like to support my journey, you can send a small donation. Thank you for listening and for sharing your precious time with me. For more life stories like this one, check out the other videos on my channel and subscribe. I've added 2 new stories on the screen. Click one and keep listening. With love.